Come on in. Welcome. This is the 8th grade American History PLC. I'm Mr. Bowman.
And I'm Mr. Rahman. Sir!
And behind the camera is Miss Kalaji, but we will see here in a little bit. Okay. So, welcome to room 116. This is actually referred to as the room of knowledge. This is where Mr. Amin has class. And we want to spend about 2 minutes with you just talking about what your son or daughter can expect from this year in 8th grade American history. So, first of all, we want to talk briefly about content. We are going to cover a time period that stretches from colonization, which I represent, colonization through the Civil War and the Reconstruction period, which is represented by General Amin. We do have special projects in 8th grade, and I wanted to mention them briefly. One of them is History Day. History Day is a long-term research process that we start this year, October 29th, and it will culminate in the finished project in the middle of January. And with that, we also have something called History Day Fair here at the junior high, where the students have the ability to compete in the National History Day contest, where they will have their projects judged and then have an opportunity to move on to regionals, which is at UWSP, state, which is at UW-Madison, and hopefully some of our students have the ability to make it to nationals, which is at the University of Maryland in Washington, D.C. What we have next is we have some things that we want all students and all parents to know what we use as educational tools in each of our classrooms. One of the things that we use, and we're going to use exclusively for material, is going to be Google Classroom. We have it up on the smart board. This is where all class content will be located, and it's a great resource not only for our students, but also for you as an active, engaged parent. You can always see what is happening in our classrooms by going to your son or daughter's Google Classrooms, and they would be able to share the access code that they use. What I want to do now, though, is I want to move us along out of the room of knowledge into the Voyage Room, and I'm going to switch off here with my colleague. There is Mrs. Kalaji. The Voyage Room.
Welcome to the Voyage Room. In this room, you'll see that we have a more traditional classroom set up in the front, and then toward the back of the room we have a flexible learning space that's used by all of our 8th grade students at various times in the year. Next, if you can take a look at the screen, I'd like to show you another online resource for our class. And that resource is used by all 3 of us instructors. It's called PowerSchool Learning. You might be familiar with PowerSchool Learning and standards-based grading from when your student was in middle school. And we're continuing on with use of that program here in 8th grade history. Here in history class, while most of your students' day-to-day content and resources are found on Google Classroom, we will be using PowerSchool Learning for posting grades, and that's grades on a day-to-day basis on various assignments within our history standards and then also within our success skills standards. So be sure to log on to PowerSchool Learning to stay up to date with your students' grades.
Thank you, Mrs. Kalaji.
You're welcome. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Amin.
We're going down to the quest room, Mr. Amin.
Room 119 is a room known as the Room of Quest. That's where Mr. Bowman teaches U.S. history.
And here's the quest room.
As you can see in the quest room, it is kind of a blend of the traditional classroom along with more of the more contemporary learning. I'm losing my words here. Colleagues?
It's a blend of traditional classroom and flexible learning spaces for our students.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Collage. What we have up on this screen is something that we gave all of our students already, not only in the regular classroom, but also in the honors. It's a trifold that kind of goes through everything that we are going to be covering, our expectations, what our standards are, grading policy, and it also addresses the success skills. So every student has received these and they have gone over these, and we will have these on Google Classroom for any parent to look at. I would kind of like to leave everyone with this is, as a parent myself, what can parents do to be actively engaged and involved with their students' learning? Ask them questions, ask them for feedback, go on to things like Google Classroom, see what they're doing in class, visit Power Learning or Power School. They're going to be required to go and look at their academic progress every 2 weeks, and that is something that you can do along with your son or daughter. We, as an 8th grade American history staff, look forward to working with your son or daughter.